One cold evening in 1889, a starving girl was thrown out of a saloon like she was nothing, but the cowboy who watched it happen changed her life. With just 4 words, ride with me. The year was 1889, a year when the frontier was still carving legends into the dust, and the town of Redwater sat in the middle of that great, unforgiving expanse. Evening shadows stretched long over the sandstone buildings as the last rays of sunlight dripped behind the jagged cliffs. A bitter wind crawled through town carrying sand, silence, and a hint of danger. Danger that a girl named Alara had been running from for weeks. She was thin, starved nearly to the bone, her clothes torn, dust-choked, and faded from the punishing sun. Days earlier she had escaped. A wagon camp where she had been treated little better than a servant, pushed aside and blamed for every misfortune. She had refused to live a life where her voice meant nothing. So she ran through dry deserts, through nights where wolves howled at the moon, through days where every step felt like the ground would swallow her whole. And now she was here in Redwater, trembling from hunger. Her vision blurred as she pushed open the doors of the Red Spur Saloon. Warmth and chatter spilled out into the night. And for the first time in days, Alara smelled food, real food, stew, hot bread, roasted meat. Her stomach twisted with painful longing. The saloon patrons barely noticed her at first, a dusty slip of a girl. But as she approached the counter and whispered, "Please, can I have something to eat?" the room fell strangely still. The barkeep, a heavy man named Dillard with mean eyes and a black-stained apron, looked her up and down with irritation. "You got coin?" Alara shook her head, her voice tiny. "Just a little food. Anything." Dillard sneered and waved her off. "We ain't a charity. Out." The word dropped like a stone. Some men in the saloon chuckled as if tossing a hungry girl to the street was some sort of entertainment. One man whispered loudly, "Strays belong outside." Another added, "Probably trouble following her." "Leave her be." Alara's throat tightened as humiliation burned through her chest. She had expected rejection. She'd received it all her life, but something about the way they looked at her, like she was dirt under their boots, made tears sting her eyes. Still, she tried again. "Please, I haven't eaten in days." She didn't even finish. Dillard marched around the counter, grabbed her by the arm, and shoved her toward the swinging doors. She stumbled, nearly falling, barely catching herself. The laughter behind her rose. Shame surged hot through her face. She pushed the doors open, ready to collapse, into the street, when a shadow suddenly blocked her path. A tall figure had been leaning against the saloon post. Arms crossed, hat tipped low, a cowboy. Not the kind that swaggered drunkenly through towns, but the kind with steady eyes and a silence that carried weight. His dusty coat, the dark stallion, tied behind him, and the quiet confidence in his posture marked him as someone who had seen more than one lifetime of hardship and was still standing. His name, though she didn't know it yet, was Cassian Ryder. His gaze slid from Alara's trembling form to Dillard, who still stood in the doorway watching. Cassian's voice came low and even, the kind that made grown men think before acting stupid. "That your idea of hospitality, Dillard?" The barkeep snorted. "Not my problem, she's a beggar. Ain't feeding someone who can't pay." Cassian shifted slightly, his presence suddenly heavier, colder. "She asked for food, not gold." Dillard straightened, trying to act unimpressed. "Not my job to feed strays." "You got a problem with that, Ryder?" The saloon fell silent. Even the drunk stopped pretending not to listen. Cassian didn't move, didn't blink. Only his jaw ticked once before he quietly stepped forward, placing himself between Alara and the doorway. His voice dropped even lower. "Yeah, I do." Alara stared up at him, confused. Why would a stranger defend her? She braced for him to scold her or tell her to move along as well. But instead, he slowly removed his hat, looked down at her with calm, steady eyes. Eyes that saw her not as a burden, not as trouble, but as a human being. "You hungry?" She hesitated, voice cracking. "Yes." He nodded once, a small gesture but powerful. Cassian turned his attention back toward the saloon. "Then she eats." "On me," Dillard scoffed. "I ain't serving her. Won't have the place turning into a refuge for runaways." Alara flinched. Cassian exhaled long and slow. Then something shifted, interest replaced by warning. "Dillard," he said, "don't mistake kindness for weakness. Serve her." The barkeep opened his mouth to argue again, but one look at Cassian's unflinching expression changed his mind. He grumbled curses under his breath, but disappeared behind the counter to ladle out stew. Meanwhile, Cassian guided Alara inside. Every eye followed them, but for the first time since entering town, she didn't feel small. Cassian sat her at a corner table far from the mocking crowd. She kept her head low, hands ringing nervously. When Dillard slapped the bowl on the table, Alara nearly jumped. Cassian placed a steadying hand on the table, not touching her, but close enough that she felt protected. The moment food touched her tongue, she nearly sobbed. She ate slowly at first, afraid it might be taken away. But Cassian didn't rush her. He didn't speak either. Not until the bowl was empty and she finally lifted her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave a simple nod.
"You alone out here?"
She hesitated. "I left people who didn't want me around. Did they hurt you?" She couldn't bring herself to answer, but her silence said enough. Cassian leaned back slightly, observing her with the quiet patience of a man who knew pain when he saw it. "Town like this ain't kind of folks traveling alone," he said. "Especially someone without a place to." "I'll find work. Somewhere." Cassian shook his head gently. "Not tonight, you won't. It's too cold. And too dark." Then he set his hat back on his head, stood and extended his hand, not in pity, but in invitation. "Ride with me," he said, voice steady and sure. "You won't go hungry again." Alara blinked, stunned. No one had ever offered her anything without wanting something in return. Her heart raced with fear, disbelief, and
Hope, real hope.
Cassian continued, patient but unwavering. "I'm not saying forever. Just till you get steady on your feet. I know a ranch a few miles out. Safe place. Good people." She searched his face for deceit, expecting the usual cruelty she'd always known. But she found none. Only sincerity. Only strength. Only kindness. And with that, her life began to shift. She placed her hand in his. Cassian squeezed gently. "Good," he said. "Let's get you home." The night sky stretched wide like a velvet blanket stitched with silver, stars as Cassian helped Alara onto his horse, a midnight black stallion named Ember, whose warm breath ghosted through the chilly air. Alara clung to the saddle horn uncertainly. She had ridden before, but never behind someone like Cassian, someone whose presence felt both powerful and strangely safe. "Hold on," he said over his shoulder, and she wrapped her arms gently around his waist. Ember started forward at a steady trot, hooves thudding against the dry earth as they left Redwater behind. The town lights faded into a faint orange glow swallowed by the desert darkness. Wind brushed Alara's face, carrying away the fear and shame that had weighed on her. For the first time in months, maybe longer, she felt like she was moving toward something instead of running from it. Cassian rode with easy confidence, guiding Ember through narrow canyon paths carved by centuries of wind. The moon lit the trail in pale silver, casting shadows that danced along sandstone walls. "This ranch," Alara finally said softly. "Who lives there?" Cassian didn't look back, but she felt the shift in his shoulders, relaxed, familiar. "The Ryland family," he answered. "Old friends of mine. They take in folks needing a fresh start. You'll be welcome there." She bit her lip. "But they don't even know me." Cassian let out a quiet laugh, warm, rumbling. "They don't need to. They'll trust my judgment." No one had ever spoken about her like that, as if she